Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2021 epic kaiju clash that is Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, Godzilla vs. Kong is the latest installment in the MonsterVerse. Warner Brothers and Legendary Pictures collaboration with Toho and other rights holders to create a MonsterVerse that combines the characters and the legacies and the overall plots of Godzilla films and Kong films, King Kong films, into one universe. And this is, in a lot of ways, you could argue they're Avengers, because you have King Kong and then you have Godzilla, and they face off against one another throughout the film. And they're very integral to the overall plot. Now, this is one of those films that I was honestly anticipating quite a bit. I really enjoyed Kong Skull Island. King of the Monsters, I also had some fun with. I thought it was a little disappointing in some regards, but at the end of the day, I still liked the film. And when I heard that this was announced, I was definitely a little bit hyped because you have these two kaijus, these two giants, these two monsters, these two titans of cinema duking it out on the big screen with a bigger budget and with all the technology that modern films have to provide that wasn't there in 1962 when you had the original Godzilla versus King Kong. So I was really looking forward to this. The trailers look like it might be a fun movie, and I was a little disheartened, a little leery of the film, though, I have to admit, after reading a couple initial reviews, hearing some things from some people that I'm very close to, and that made me leery and made me go into this with extremely low expectations. And I feel that for the most part, the film lived up to most of the expectations that I had for it. I enjoyed this film quite a bit. I thought it was a enjoyable, entertaining blast of insane, epic awesomeness in a lot of different ways, from the visuals, from the battles between Godzilla and Kong, to the two of them teaming up and fighting Mecha Godzilla. And it does have its issues, namely the writing and pretty much anything that pertains to the humans in the story. But at the end of the day, its goal is to entertain, and it entertained me a lot. It surprised me when it comes to how much it did sufficiently and consistently entertain me. The film is directed by Adam Wingard, and I actually thought he did an awesome job directing this movie. He managed to maintain the same level of kaiju sized energy that the film needed. It needed to be this big, loud spectacle, and I felt that for the most part, Adam Wingard handled that really well and really brought that spectacle to the screen. I love the way that he takes some risks when it comes to the camera work. There are times where the camera will turn upside down or it will spin around and then do a 360. I really like that. It really helped the film not only feel very fluid, but also gave it an extra level in terms of the energy. And definitely made some shots even more impressive and also helped the film become more immersive. There are shots in this that look like they could have been in a motion capture ride at Universal Studios. So I think that that's an extra added dynamic that's honestly really cool. The sequences that I'm talking about in particular are the ones when you have the humans in the Hollow Earth vehicle and they're flying around and they're trying to stay away from Godzilla and Kong while they're having their battle in Tokyo. I thought that was a really cool setup in terms of the way that it was shot. And I felt that for the most part, Wingard had a lot of passion for the project, and it definitely did show on the screen as well. You could tell that he just wanted to have as much fun as he possibly could with this universe and with these characters. And I think it definitely really made a difference because there's a lot of other films in this MonsterVerse. For instance, Godzilla 2014, where the direction it's just taking itself too seriously, and I didn't feel that that was the case here, and I think that was really to the film's benefit because in a lot of ways it is this over-the-top monster basher. So it made sense that the direction itself was equally as over-the-top and as energetic as the action that's on the screen and as the overall plot and concept. Now, speaking of the plot, the screenplay is where the film falters, if it does falter. And it does falter. I'm not going to say that it doesn't have its moments where it does stumble or trip over its tail. The script by Eric Pearson and Max Borenstein. When it comes to the monsters, when they are fighting, and anything to do with the kaiju, the film is honestly really effective. And I felt that the writing, for the most part, was well handled. I know there are some critics out there who really feel the way that the fights between Godzilla and Kong were written were poor and ineffective and not very good. And to that, I agree to disagree. I guess it's one of those things where going into it, I expected Kong to lose. I never expected for one moment in any of the battles for Kong to beat Godzilla. Because Kong, even with a growth spurt, he's not in Godzilla's weight class. To me, in a lot of ways, Godzilla vs. Kong is like Rey Mysterio versus Brock Lesnar. Rey's going to get some shots in. He's going to hit his 619. He's going to hold his own. But he's not going to beat Brock Lesnar. He's going to get subdued. He's going to tap. Or he's going to get the F5. And I guess I was happy with the battles because that's what I expected going in. And I understand the criticisms from people who were not pleased with the results of the confrontation between the two because they felt it was too one-sided or they felt that Kong was handled the wrong way. But I went into it expecting that Kong was going to lose. I just wanted Kong to at least put up a fight. And I felt the film had him put up a fight. More than just a little bit of a fight. I mean, there are a lot of moments in the film between the two battles between the two where I felt that Kong held his own. He stood toe to toe with Godzilla and he hit Godzilla and definitely made Godzilla really feel his presence and remember who he is. And that was enough for me. The moments where Kong is smacking Godzilla in the face with a couple slobber knockers and elbowing him and then tackling him into the water like the first confrontation between the two. Or during the second battle in Tokyo when Kong uses the axe and just knocks Godzilla back into a bunch of skyscrapers. And in the end, the two team up. They definitely share some mutual respect for one another because Kong winds up helping Godzilla and absolutely wrecks and destroys and annihilates Mechagodzilla in a really crowd-pleasing, badass moment where he cuts Mechagodzilla to pieces and then rips his fucking head off. I like that. I thought that was pretty awesome. So I don't really agree with the criticisms that Kong in this film is written in a way where he comes across as a total wimp. Uh, and if you feel that way, I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think that that is perfectly fine, and honestly, I can understand why some people would look at it that way. I looked at it as a predetermined wrestling match, like Rey Mysterio versus Brock Lesnar. I like both wrestlers. Well, I like Rey more than Brock, and Brock I've soured on over the years, but Brock's still an impressive physical specimen. Also, I felt when it comes to the fights between King Kong and Godzilla, the writers did the best that they could in terms of using King Kong's agility, but the way that Godzilla is portrayed and the way that he is designed in this monsterverse is very limiting in terms of what you can do in a fight. So the fact that the fights were short or they weren't really that long didn't bother me because I feel that if they were any longer, it would expose the limitations of the two kaijus. And by two, I mean the limitations in terms of Kong being undersized and Godzilla just being a big chunky guy. He's too chunky. He's too thick. I mean, he's to the point where he's like Yokozuna over here. He can barely even move. So I feel that they should have slimmed him down a little bit or something because then it would have made it so Godzilla could do more, because it really limited what Godzilla could do in a fight with Kong because Kong's so agile. And that being said, they worked with what they had, and I still feel that the battles were relatively satisfying and epic and just really impressive in terms of their size and scale. And other aspects of the script I liked was the stuff with the Hollow Earth. I guess it's probably because I'm a big fan of the Hollow Earth. I really like a lot of stories that deal with the Hollow Earth, like the Hollow Earth stuff in Marvel. There's an Indiana Jones novel called Indiana Jones and the Hollow Earth that's one of my favorite Indiana Jones novels. So I have a soft spot for the Hollow Earth. So seeing it in this film I thought was a lot of fun because I like the Hollow Earth. If you're not really into the Hollow Earth, then that subplot might not really work for you, and you might not find it as satisfying as I did, but I really liked that, especially once they got to the Hollow Earth and you saw the visuals. There's some absolutely gorgeous visuals in this film, and a lot of them happen in the Hollow Earth, and that also is a sequence where Wingard's direction really shines in terms of how he plays around with angles and different techniques in terms of his camera work. But there are some glaring flaws with this screenplay. I like the stuff with the monsters. I like the creativity when it comes to things like Kong's giant axe. I liked it. I thought it was actually pretty cool. It was nice to see Kong have a weapon, something that he could use to give him an advantage over Mechagodzilla, or to enable him to have a puncher's chance of even hitting a blow hard enough on Godzilla to send him on his back. Because without that, he's just not going to be able to do it. Like I said, he's not in his weight class. It's not even close. Godzilla also has atomic breath. Kong ain't got shit on Godzilla in that regard. So I like the fact that the script gave him something, a weapon that he had the ability to wield, and also gave him moments where he got to wield that weapon in a genuinely epic and badass fashion. But the human stuff sucks. A lot of critics have already pointed this out, and I'm definitely not going to be the last. But it definitely is something that should be repeated. The human characters in this film, and sadly in most of the films in this monsterverse, are woefully subpar in terms of their characterization, in terms of their character development, in terms of really any reason to give a fuck about them. The best human characters were in Kong Skull Island. To me, that's the peak so far of this franchise, is the characters in that film. And I don't know why they weren't able to replicate that success in these other films in the franchise. Because despite what the director says, where he said something along the lines of, well, these characters are ones that you really care about, they're not. They're not characters you really care about. So when you have the scenes with the humans, the film does suffer. It does start to drag, and it's not as enjoyable when it's having this epic monster action. So when you're not having Godzilla wrecking a city, or Kong going to the Hollow Earth, or Godzilla and Kong facing off against one another, or Godzilla and Kong fighting Mechagodzilla, the film then goes to the humans, and it loses a lot. It loses a lot of momentum. And I definitely feel it has to do with the script, because despite the fact that I guess there should be a reason for you to care about Dr. Nathan Lind because of what happened to his brother, you still don't give a fuck about this guy. He's a pawn shop, Family Dollar version of Joel Kinnaman. Um, Alexander Skarsgård just doesn't really do anything for me as Dr. Nathan Lind. He says that his character was a homage to Indiana Jones, Romancing the Stone, Lethal Weapon, and Die Hard. I didn't see any of that in that character. All of those films have charismatic leads. His character was the opposite of charismatic. He was cardboard. Millie Bobby Brown, I like her as an actress. I've been a fan of hers ever since I saw her in Stranger Things. This character comes across as whiny and unlikable and bratty, and I didn't really like the way they wrote her in this. They're trying to make her be this rebel, rebelling against her dad, and listening to this podcast, and falling for these conspiracy theories, and it was just one of those things where I feel they really handled that character poorly in this film. Rebecca Hall plays Dr. Eileen Andrews, who's like the Jane Goodall of King Kong. She's tolerable, but she doesn't really leave much of an impact or much of an impression. Uh, Brian Tyree Henry as the Apex Cybernetics tech, who's a conspiracy theorist. I hated this character. I hated the writing for this character. He was unfunny comic relief, and the whole stuff with him being a podcaster didn't really amount to much, if you ask me. It didn't really add any extra dynamics to the guy. It just felt like it was an excuse and a really quick way to provide some exposition to the audience. And I absolutely, on the same level, despised Millie Bobby Brown's character, Madison's friend, Josh, played by Julian Dennison. This character was the epitome of lame and useless. He's some tech kid. He's a tech wizard, but then he really doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. So why the fuck was he? Why the fuck was he even in this movie? He's another bit of comic relief that's not needed, because you already have forced comic relief with the podcast guy. The coolest thing about this kid is that he listens to Judas Priest, and he's wearing a Judas Priest shirt. But just because you wear a Judas Priest t-shirt doesn't make you cool, doesn't make you on the same level as Judas Priest. It makes you Judas Least. Because that's really what it was. He was Judas Least. And then the villains here, really forgettable. Demián Bichir plays Walter Simmons, who's the head of Apex Cybernetics, who creates Mechagodzilla. This guy was completely one note, nothing to him. And I'm not really going to blame the actor because he had nothing to work with here. This was just a very cliched, been there, done that bad guy who thinks he can control God, and then of course he can't, and his creation turns on him and kills his ass. Great. Like, we really needed another portrayal of that kind of character. And then there's another side villain and his daughter, played by Eiza González as Maya. You know what's interesting is the screenplay did a better job making me actually genuinely hate this bitch than her father. Because I just didn't care about the father, even though he was meant to be the main villain. And then he had other stuff like Ren Sarazawa, played by Shun Oguri. And Ren was written in a way where this guy was completely non-existent in terms of his character development. You're like, okay, he's just a pilot of the Mechagodzilla, but then it doesn't lead to anything because they put the new power source into Mechagodzilla, and then it fries the guy's brain, and then he's just dead. So what was the point of bringing this guy in? What was the point of establishing him as a character? Apparently he had some more scenes where they were cut out. I don't think they probably would add that much except more boredom to the running time. And I will say this, the human parts of the script, I felt that they were more well balanced versus King of Monsters or Godzilla 2014. So they didn't really cripple the film for me, despite how weak they are. Because there are some moments where it felt like the humans at least had something to do. And I know some people have some criticisms for that, but I don't mind it because it gives them something to do other than just sitting around with their thumbs up their asses or just moving the plot along. Having them actually interact and help Kong in some way, I don't mind. I don't mind the moment at Hollow Earth where Kong looks like he's being overwhelmed by one of the monsters, and then one of the Hollow Earth vehicles shoots some missiles and hurts the monster enough so then Kong can overcome it and beat it. I don't mind that. I'm fine with Kong having allies and not having to do everything himself. I didn't view it as Kong was just 100% saved by the humans because they shot the thing, but it didn't kill it, and then Kong is still the one that delivered the final blow. And prior to that, Kong grabbed one of those things and smashed it into another one of those monsters and killed them in a pretty cool scene. So I don't have an issue with the way that was written. If it was one of those things where the thing is, there's no prior scene where Kong is beating the fuck out of these things, and the first time you see these monsters is them attacking Kong, and Kong can't handle it, and then the humans shoot the thing and kill it, then I would have an issue with it. But I didn't really see things that way, so it didn't bother me that much. And then when it comes to Kong's heart being started after his second fight with Godzilla, I was okay with that too. I mean, was it silly? Yes. But you're talking to the guy who genuinely enjoys watching King Kong Lives. And that's a film with a giant heart transplant. So I'm not... The whole thing with restarting his heart, it doesn't really bug me that much. It added an extra bit of tension, and once again, it gave these humans something to do in the finale. And that's why I feel that it is more balanced in terms of the kaiju action and the humans versus other films in the franchise. Because there seems like there's stuff for them to do, at least. And I actually didn't mind the Hollow Earth stuff. So when they're going to the Hollow Earth, I actually was fairly captivated by that, and I felt at least there was a lot of eye candy in terms of the visuals to keep me interested and keep me hooked. And then you get to Mechagodzilla. I feel that that whole thing was rushed. I have to admit, it was really rushed. It was still really fun to see Kong and Godzilla team up against Mechagodzilla, and there was a really badass moment when Kong fucks him up. But they could have shown Godzilla get more shots in. I think that was handled poorly when it comes to Godzilla just getting wrecked, just getting his ass handed to him over and over again by Mechagodzilla. Like they really overpowered Mechagodzilla in some of those scenes. And I would have liked to have seen Kong and Godzilla do more tag team action instead of Kong getting the axe and then Godzilla shooting the fire breath and then charging up the axe. I would have liked to have seen the two do some teamwork, some tag teaming, uh, do a body slam on Mechagodzilla or something. They did some of that where they grabbed him by the arms and threw him around, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more. And the whole thing with how the connection is lost with Mechagodzilla, absolutely awful. Lazy bullshit with, oh, just pour the alcohol in the computer and then that works. Like, what the fuck? Like, really? There's all these things you could have done. For instance, Mechagodzilla is controlled by this head of one of the heads of Ghidorah. How about the head of Ghidorah is regenerating? And as soon as they put the new power source in, it's almost close to being fully regenerated. And that's what's controlling Mechagodzilla, is the brain of Ghidorah, not this computer thing. And now it's working separate from the computer. So in order to stop Mechagodzilla and really hurt the main power source, because yes, it is technically connected to the computer still, but in order to lose the connection, you have to kill the head of Ghidorah. So that's where you get Millie Bobby Brown and her friends involved. And then you have them find a way to maybe blow up the head of Ghidorah or light it on fire or electrocute it or do literally anything other than, oh, I'll just take your flask and throw alcohol in the computer. And that works. That just reeks of the writers running out of time and they were on a deadline and they were just like, fuck it, he just pours water. That's every bit as stupid as putting a grenade on a computer to stop a outbreak of some kind of drug in the water supply. So I don't understand the thought process there with just pouring water on the computer. That was stupid. That was the most aggravating thing to me is that bit and the really painful attempts at comedy throughout the movie. But all of this being said, like I said, I still enjoyed the movie. I still found it to be entertaining despite its issues. And the cast, since you don't really have much for these actors and actresses to work with, most of them don't really deliver performances that leave that much of a mark. Like I said, Alexander Skarsgård is cardboard. Millie Bobby Brown, she just seems to be, I don't know, it seems to be a little bitchy here. Like, I didn't really like her character in this. I thought she was more likable in the last movie, in King of the Monsters. Seemed like they were trying to do the whole rebellious teenager thing, and it just didn't work for me. Rebecca Hall is bland. tolerable but bland. Uh, Tyree Henry, I didn't care for. I didn't think he was funny. I didn't think he did that great of a job in terms of his performance. It was below average, nothing special. Shun Oguri, he didn't have barely enough scenes to really make me remember his acting, let alone leave an impression. Uh, Eiza González, she played a good bitch. I didn't like her. Didn't mean it was a good character, but I definitely didn't like her, so I guess maybe they succeeded in that regard. Josh Valentine, played by Julian Dennison, annoying, seemed like he was a dead weight. And it's too bad because this actor has shown in Deadpool 2 that he can have charisma. Where the hell did all of that go? That was nowhere to be found in this movie when it comes to his performance. It's like he had a charisma lobotomy or something. Uh, Lance Reddick, he was in it as some guy named Guillermin, which is definitely a reference to the director of the 1976 King Kong, John Guillermin. But he's only in it for like 2 scenes, and I think he maybe says 1 or 2 lines. Kyle Chandler's character, Dr. Mark Russell, just a glorified cameo role. He does nothing ultimately other than look at the damage and try to receive a phone call from his daughter. Demián Bichir, like I said, just a very forgettable milquetoast, saltine cracker villain. And it seemed like he just patterned his performance after Ricardo Montalban in Fantasy Island. I half expected him to go on to another part of his facility and ask for Tattoo, and have Tattoo look up in the air and be like, the plane, the plane, the Godzilla, the Godzilla. Like, I half expected that to happen because it was just channeling Ricardo Montalban in Fantasy Island. And then there's Kaylee Hottle as Gia, the mute girl who communicates with Godzilla. Actually, I thought she was probably the best actor. The best performance in the entire movie is from a kid who has no speaking lines, who doesn't say a single word other than in sign language. So that's a pretty bad cast. That's a pretty bad amount of performances in terms of the percentage of quality takes and quality performances from the cast if the best performer is the mute character. So yeah, the more I think about the film, when I really sit down and think about the flaws, like the human characters and the human subplots and the performances by the cast and some of the really stupid decisions by the writers, it does take the film down a notch at the end of the day for me. But I still enjoyed the movie. I still would like to pick it up on 4K one of these days and add it to my collection. And there are other aspects of it that I also felt were noteworthy. I felt Tom Holkenberg's score, for the most part, was quite good. I liked the 80s retro synth vibe of it, and it added some extra weight and power to the action sequences, and an extra sense of wonder to the sequences that were trying to really catch you when it comes to the eye candy. Speaking of the eye candy, I want to give the visual effects artists a lot of credit. I thought they did a remarkable job creating this film's visuals in terms of the big grand battles between Kong and Godzilla, and the look of the Hollow Earth, and all of those things. When it comes to the moments that are supposed to catch your eye, I definitely felt that the visual effects were top notch. The cinematography by Ben Saracen I thought was genuinely gorgeous in a lot of different ways. I really like the way the cinematographer and the director here handle lighting. There's a lot of bright colors in this, and a really bright color palette. And I feel that the neon colors actually do pop quite well. And I think they fit the neon, bright, over the top story and the larger than life parts of the the script. And I think the two were a good pair. I really do. And the editing is quite good too by Josh Schaefer. And for a film that's an hour and 40 something minutes, I thought it went by at a pretty good pace. Even though the human stuff wasn't as engaging as it could be, and wasn't really that well written or that well performed, I thought that the balance between the kaijus and the humans when it comes to how things played out, I felt that it wasn't the best that it could be, but I felt that it was suitable. It worked. It wasn't too much of a distraction, even though it got close. It got really close at times. So it's one of those films where I think if you go into it expecting a big, loud, dumb summer blockbuster popcorn film like a Transformers movie or a new Marvel film, I think you can get some enjoyment out of this. If you're expecting something a little more serious, if you're expecting things to go a particular way in terms of the confrontation between the two kaijus, and you want to see them have moments where one gets a victory over the other, I think you're definitely going to be let down in that regard. And like I said, if the Hollow stuff doesn't grab you, that's a big chunk of the movie. So when you throw that in there, and if that isn't something that sticks, I could see why you would not be a fan of this film. When it has its kaiju monster battles, when Kong and Godzilla are facing off and they're sharing blows and they're fighting Mecha Godzilla and skyscrapers are getting knocked down like dominoes. It's a lot of fun to watch. I definitely gotta give it its credit, and I gotta give the film its due. I feel that it really did do a solid job making those kind of sequences feel as epic and as cool and as grandiose as the size of the characters warranted. So that's my thoughts on Godzilla vs. Kong, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.